Okay, for this first tip, we're going to try out some mark making using a pencil here. I have a charcoal pencil here and then a few oil pastels. Sometimes I'll use soft pastels like the chalk, or colored pencils or crayons. Just something other than paint to give the piece some contrast, make it pop a little bit, give it a little extra detail. It adds a really fun, cool element. So let's try it out. Okay, let's make some marks. Now for this, I'm just gonna make a bunch of, I like to do just random things on the canvas. Sometimes I'll draw some shapes. Sometimes I'll do some text. Long, whoop, live the king, whatever that means. Do some text. Some random shapes just to get some marks down on the canvas. Okay, now with these marks, when I start a painting, I'll just start out with simple marks like this. Most of this will probably be covered up by the time the painting is finished. Some of it might come through. I'm hoping that some of it will just very subtly come through. Add a hint of excitement on the bottom layers for the finished product. So I keep this part kind of loose, and if I'm going to put layers on top of this of paint, maybe after a layer or two dries, I'll go back and make more marks and continue the mark making process. This is a good way to add an extra element to your abstract paintings. Try it out, some mark making. Tip number 2, layers. Layers, layers, layers. Or I'll call these washes because it's going to be a thin layer of paint, acrylic paint mixed with water. So it's almost like you're washing it with tinted water in a sense. It's going to be pretty thin. And that will allow for layers and layers and the bottom layers to show through and affect the top layers. It'll add more diversity to your painting, more subtle changes, and it usually comes out looking pretty neat the more layers you can get going. Okay, so let's start with the first one. I just have a basic earth tone here. Neutral color. I'm just gonna cover up all the white. Cover up all the white. I'm gonna let this dry before I add my next layer. Cool. Okay, our first background layer has dried. This is kind of a beige light tan. And so for our next color, I have this real light green color that I'm gonna add. Now, for this next step, like I said, for a wash, it's going to be a very thin layer. So I'm going to use this water. I'm going to spray down the canvas first. Then I'm going to paint on the green, and it'll be real milky and a little bit runny. But I'm going to let it set for a minute or two, not fully dry. I'm going to use this rag, and I'm just going to dab it, maybe scrape some off. And what that will do is that will leave some of the green, but still let this beige color underneath be exposed, and so you'll get that kind of cool color combination. And so the more colors of layers that I add, they all will combine to make a fuller looking, more complete looking piece, so that it's not just one plain color all the way across. So that's that is the goal, and so let's try it out. So with this, the harder that you wipe, the more it will expose the underneath layers. So if you want to lighten a certain space up on your canvas, add maybe a little bit more water and rub a little bit harder. But for this looks about fine. It's very subtle. The transition between the background beige and the top green, it's really subtle, and I like that. Okay, this one's dried. Another layer, same process, different color. This time I have this kind of bluish gray. Let's give it a go. Okay, we'll do one more wash just to give you more examples, and I'll just do plain white this time. Okay, so we've done some background marks and we've done some washes on top, and this is kind of what we've ended up with here, is a cool kind of subtle combination of neutral tone colors. Okay, for this next tip, I like to call this patching, like a patch on a piece of clothing. So what I like to do is I like to take a darker color than what is currently on here, make a patch, just make an area with that darker color, maybe a square or some sort of shape. Once that dries, take a lighter color that's maybe already on the canvas, something of a lighter tone, and go right back over it. And what that'll do, the darker underneath will affect the way that the lighter color looks, and it'll create another subtle piece of contrast for your painting. So let's give it a go. Okay, here's our first layer. Let's let it dry. Okay, this is dry, so now let's cover it up with a lighter color. I've chosen this kind of creamy color. Now I'm just gonna go right over the top like this. Okay, next tip, spray paint. Adding a little bit of spray paint to your piece is going to add some variety and, if you do it right, some subtle contrast. Today I just have some gold, but experiment, use any color you'd like. I would say don't go crazy, use it sparingly, but I'm going to mix this technique with mark making, so I'm going to grab a pencil, maybe some charcoal, maybe some oil pastels after this dries, and combine them and see what we end up with. Okay, that about does it. Now the fun thing with this type of painting is that you can spend all day tinkering with it, using different marks, different colors, different ways to apply the paint. You have a lot of fun. For today, I hope that these few tips were helpful for you to get the creative juices flowing. So go and experiment and have fun.